Welcome to Commander Central, episode 284, and today we'll be talking about free spells in EDH. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Gentlemen, how's it going this afternoon?
Peachy.
Perfect.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, good day.
It is. I'm recording on a Friday, or a Thursday. Usually we do this on Friday, but I was going to say like usual, but actually we're going a day early, and we're probably going to keep recording on Thursday just to give our editor, Rafael Garcia, a little more time to get shows done before they have to be out on Monday. So, yeah, we're changing up just a little bit. And then Chris has weekend plans, I believe, right, Chris?
Yep, going camping. Nice.
Not many days left as summer is kind of wrapping up here.
You can camp in the winter. We're from Wisconsin. It's what we do.
You are a better man than me if you're willing to do that.
No, that does not sound fun at all. That's cold,
No,
and bears will eat you. You are a burrito in a sleeping bag. Why do people do this?
Bears hibernate in the winter, homie. What are you talking about?
Not all bears.
Not polar bears, Chris.
Or pandas, I think.
We got real problems when there's polar bears and pandas roaming around Wisconsin.
There's something seriously wrong. I mean, that's end of the world times
Hey.
there.
You're camping at a zoo, okay? Just solved all the problems.
Could be. There we go. So anyone get any fun games in this week? What have you been up to, Max? Play Commander?
No Commander this week for me.
Somebody literally 2 minutes ago pointed out in our Slack that you told that story last week about how you cast that Teferi's Protection, so I couldn't blow up your Reliquary Tower.
Yep.
Did you see the note about that?
Yeah, I should have discarded down to hand size.
Because your Teferi's Protection's phased out then. I mean, I didn't catch it. It's one of those things, like, there's just so much... Commander's such a complicated game. Like, even your opponent, missed that.
Oh, well.
That actually super regularly happens when we're streaming for EDH Rec, that all four of us playing the game, including sometimes people like Sheldon Menery, who is on there and is a level 4 judge, you just miss stuff. Like, sometimes people will even point things out, and he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I didn't even catch that weird interaction. So, like, Magic's just a crazy complicated game, and that was, we all missed that one.
Well, I guess I scumbagged a victory for sure then, if I cheated,
Yes.
apparently.
Exactly. There you go. I played a couple games this week. First game at the Shaw, patron supporter Kyle was in, and him and I played against two brand new players, very, very new to the game, and we played real, like basically our weakest decks. And I could tell, I've played with Kyle before, and I know what he's like as a player. He was very much trying to throw the game. And I was very much not making plays as well. And they were like, they were players that were so new. It was a real struggle to successfully try to throw a game to them. And I remember being in that place, as a player, or I've been there before too, where like you're trying to be subtle about it. You don't want to act like you're playing badly or missing things on purpose. But like as a competitive player, I can tell when people are doing that as someone who's played a long time. And yeah, sometimes playing against super new players, they do not want to let them win. And that happened a little bit in this game.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but they both seemed to have a really good time. It was a fun game, so there was a lot of back and forth, and they left happy, so that's all you can hope for sometimes. And that was a good experience. I had fun.
Indeed.
So if you out there in listener land want to share some fun games you played, how'd you go about doing that, Chris?
Well, you can follow us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central, and you can find us on CMDRCentral.com. Quick word for all you listeners. Apparently, our CMDRCentral.com website is not currently working. We are looking into it and trying to get it fixed.
Yes, indeed. And I think we have a new patron supporter this week too. Shout out, Max.
Yeah, we want to say hello and welcome to Kevin Ellis. And if you want to support us on Patreon, head over to patreon.com/CMDRCentral and check out our reward tiers, such as the Decks You Play shows, or just joining our community to chat and play virtual EDH.
Okay, before we jump into the show topic, we had a huge announcement thing that we've kind of been talking about the last couple of weeks from WotC about the 2022 timeline.
Oh, here I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that, Dana, about how Max's hot take is completely garbage.
Yeah, I had the Spider-Man thing all wrong.
You did.
And I'm okay with that.
Announcement. Oh boy.
Well, okay. We'll do a quick aside, Max. How'd you think of the trailer?
Oh, I loved it. I've watched it a couple dozen times now. Like it's really good.
Yeah, I'm very into it too. I'm super excited for it. Not that I'm a Marvel fanboy. I fully admit that. I'm always kind of in the can for him, but that one especially, I'm really hyped for. So anyway, okay. So back on topic, the 2022 Magic announcements. And I haven't had a chance to talk to either of you really about these because Chris was busy on Tuesday in the shop. Max was busy. We just haven't had a chance to really go over this stuff. So let's spend a few minutes looking at this. 2021, there isn't much we didn't know. Yes, we're getting Innistrad, the 2 sets, which we already knew about. The only thing really new that affects Commander players is the Commander Collection Black, which is the black version of the Commander Collection Green we got last year. And we got a card listing for that. That will drop sometime before the end of the year.
Yeah, so again, this is going to have 8 cards and a special token, just like the green one. The cards this time around are the Liliana Heretical Healer, which is the Flip Walker from Magic Origins. We have a new printing of Ghoul-Caller Gisa, Ophiomancer, Phyrexian Arena, Reanimate, Toxic Deluge, and of course, a Soul Ring and a Command Tower. And then the token is the Death Touch Snake and a Zombie token. They're a double-sided token.
The collection green was a really good piece of value, and this looks to be as well. A 5-mancer is sitting at almost $20 right now. The cheapest Phyrexian Arena printing is almost $20. Deluge is, I think, $5-ish. Reanimate's always at least a couple bucks. Gisa's, I think, $5 or $6. Liliana's $5 or $6. This is just, it's just one more nice value collection of reprints for cards that kind of needed it. And we're a chance to get some really cool alt art on all of these. And, a 5-mancer didn't have a foil, didn't have a token before. So it's our first chance to get those as well. I just like this product, and I'm glad we're getting one a year. And I wish we got 2 or 3 of these a year. I think these kind of things, at least for me, don't make me feel that kind of burnout from getting too much product, because it just doesn't require you to pay attention that much. It's kind of like a secret lair in a degree. So yeah, I'm a fan of this, and I'm probably going to pick this one up. Did you guys get the green collection at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I'm just a fan of these. They're very cool.
I'm gonna throw this out here, Dana, because you're talking card prices. I'm gonna beat the internet to it.
What was I wrong on?
Everything but Ghoul-Caller Gisa. Everything's above $10, pushing $20, except for Gisa,
really?
Which is like sitting at $7.
Okay, all right.
But everything else is 15 and above, like Toxic Deluge. According to Scryfall, the cheapest price is $20.
Oh, wow. Because it had dropped since with the, I think it was Double Masters printing, it was down to 10. I guess I haven't checked since then.
Phyrexian Arena is pushing 20. So yeah, all of these are very...
20, definitely. Yeah, that's a good value. However, 2022, we got a couple of interesting things. First of which... Is my cat that loud?
Your cat is not a fan of Commander Collection Black, Dana.
She's not, apparently.
I love it.
My wife has left the house about 5 minutes ago, so that's what's going on there. She's upset. Okay, Q1 of 2022, we're getting Kamagawa Neon Destiny. So back to Kamagawa, though it's like a future Kamagawa. The first thing I will note here, and I'm curious about your take on this more than I am Kamagawa in general, because I think a lot's going to change. It's not going to look much like the first Kamagawa setting. But they didn't officially say this, but my guess is this is kind of their unofficial way of announcing that Magic is no longer going to be constrained to planes that look like traditional high fantasy Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. This is very much a cyberpunk-esque plane that we're visiting now. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it. There should be planes that are more... When magic exists and flying spaceships exist, the technology to make guns and lasers you would think should exist as well. Like there should just be some planes that look different, and I'm guessing that's going to be something we're going to see more and more often moving forward. But that's a big change too, aesthetically at least.
I don't think it should be an issue. I mean, if you go, let's say, we'll relate it to something that's huge right now, and that's how the Marvel stuff. So you look at Asgard in the Thor, world. That's all fantasy based, but yet they have their flying ships and their laser beams and their all that fun jazz. So I mean, it should be no issue whatsoever.
It doesn't bother me either, but I've seen some people really seem to not like any deviation from what we've seen in the past. What do you think of it, Max? Does it bother you at all?
Doesn't bother me at all. I like that they're kind of expanding on what they could consider a plane in Magic or how a plane will look. I just think it's 2021, time to change things up a bit in my opinion. I like it, so that's all that matters to me.
The thought I had was like once upon a time for the first 15-ish years of Magic, we primarily were on Dominaria. Occasionally you'd go to a different plane for a set, but like 95% of the sets took place in Dominaria, and then that switched up, and we were going to a different plane every year, basically multiple times. Sometimes that was a pretty big change, and now the planes are just gonna physically look a little bit different, or at least have different levels of technology and stuff. I mean, it's not a crazy shift to have made. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm perfectly fine with it. Then the second set, the spring set, is Streets of New Capenna, which is like a crime world led by 5 different basically crime factions. So this is like, I'm going to guess it's going to be kind of mobster-esque with probably 5 different gangs based on, kind of different real world archetypes, whether it's, the Italian mob or the triads in China, who knows? But that's what my guess is. But that's also probably going to be aesthetically a little bit different than most Magic worlds, and that's kind of cool too. What do you guys think of that one?
Perfect. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, it's fun.
I just want gangstas running around. I want some sort of thing
Why
where
not?
it's like,
exactly.
As long as you have X amount of creatures within your gang, like the Triad or something like that, everyone gets a bonus when they all show up and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just going to be a different skin functionally, and it's fine. I'm down with it as well. How about you, Max?
This is probably my favorite one that of the core sets that were announced the other day. I love movies like The Departed and Godfather and stuff like that, so I'm super looking forward to this. And it's another 3-color set, so that'll be fun to play around in.
In the same time period, roughly, we are getting another Commander's Legend set. This one, however, is kind of a Universes Beyond thing. It's Battle for Baldur's Gate is the name of it, so it's themed around D&D again. So it's not going to be a standard legal set. It's going to be basically, Commander Legends 2 with a very specific theme. Hey, we've already done the Forgotten Realms and we've done Commander Legends and we're combining the two of them. I just can't imagine this is a problem at all for me. I'm sure it's not for you guys either. And hey, it's more Commander Legends. That's great. Up next in quarter 3, the main set coming out. So this will be kind of the fall set or the equivalent of, what we usually get, the, Eldraine or the Midnight Hunt set we're getting this year. In that slot is Dominaria United, which is just back to Dominaria. And for anyone who really doesn't like the steampunk aesthetic or the crime world aesthetic change, hey, we're going back to the original plane functionally in Dominaria. So that's something for people that don't like that either. And if you like it, you probably still like Dominaria. This is one of the ones, these last 2 sets I'm very excited for. I like Kamagawa. I like the idea of New Capenna, but I really like Dominaria, and this is one I'm super excited for. How about you guys?
I am, but I'm not at the same time. I mean,
okay.
I want to know where they're going with it because we just went back to Dominaria recently, and what kind of new story are we going to actually get out of this? Like, is it going to be just new cards but the same old flavor to them, or is it going to be actually something new?
My idea here is I'm wondering if this isn't where the Phyrexian invasion happens, the new Phyrexia attack that they're clearly building to.
Makes sense with the set that comes after.
Exactly. It's happened before and in Dominaria, so there's a logic to the Phyrexians staging their first big invasion there. That's clearly something that's going to happen. Dominaria United kind of has a feel about that Mirrodin Pure thing where you didn't know what the last set of Scars of Mirrodin was going to be named depending on who won. It's just, the version of Dominaria coming together against a common foe in the Phyrexians. So I'm wondering if that's not what that winds up being.
Yeah, I mean, Dominaria is their bread and butter. It makes them the money. The last Dominaria set was, when this one releases 4 years ago, that was back in April of 2018. So it's kind of following that, set rotation that kind of the Ravnica sets have. Every X years we go back to Ravnica, and you know what? I'm kind of okay with doing that with similar planes. So every 4 years, let's go visit Dominaria, and every 5, let's go visit Kaladesh or something like that.
The one thing I would really like to get from this set that I wanted last time that we didn't get is I'd like them to restore the Weatherlight's ability to hop planes. So we're not just tethered to planeswalkers going from plane to plane to plane. We could actually have then the crew of the Weatherlight once again going from place to place to place. So instead of being okay, we're visiting this plane this time and Jace is going to pop up there, we can actually get the Weatherlight showing up. So hey, we have Joyra or somebody on this particular plane because the Weatherlight's there. So I would like that just because I think that's interesting seeing that crew versus being tethered to planeswalkers when we visit planes. Same rough time frame, we're getting Double Masters 2022. Double Masters was fantastic the first time around. It was a ton of reprints. The fact that there was 2 rares in every pack, or technically 2 mythics even, really helped a ton of card prices. I mean, Rings of Brighthearth was a $50 card, and that tanked down to $4. And I guess that sucks if you were holding on to them for speculation, but if you wanted to buy one, that's amazing for you. Austere Command always pops back up to $14, and that knocked down to 2 or so during that reprint. at Double Masters. If you are someone who just wants to pick up cards, Double Masters was an amazing chance for you to pick up a lot of cards at really reasonable prices. And hopefully that occurs again with Double Masters 2022. That's just very useful. The last previews we had for next year are in the fourth quarter, so that's kind of like the November-ish area.
You're not going to talk about the Commander precons?
Oh, I guess, you know what? Let's go back to that, Chris, because it's at the bottom of the list here and I missed it. Yeah, so we're getting the Warhammer 40k Commander precons sometime in that second half window, whether it's sometimes between when Dominaria comes out at the end of the year. So we're getting 4 Commander precons. That is not taking the place of the ones we will probably get in the spring, roughly around New Capenna, like we've been getting them, and I'm guessing they're going to be tied to that set as well, like the ones that have been the last 2 years. So we're just going to get 4 Commander precons that are specifically Warhammer K40 themed. Again, things that are not traditional fantasy. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Again, it's a different aesthetic theme, and this is a different IP going to Warhammer. Is that something you're excited about, or do you not like it, or do you have thoughts either way?
I guess my biggest thought on this is that I'm happy that they're making it, from the sounds of it, more readily available compared to when they did the Walking Dead thing. So if people want to play them, they can get their hands on them easier than the other versions. And that's what I'm most excited about. I have no clue what it's all going to be about. Maybe they will be just cool cards in general. I don't know. We'll see.
How about you, Max?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. The fact that this is going to be just something you can find on the shelf at your LGS or your local big box store is huge. I don't know a lot about Warhammer 40k, but I'm definitely excited to see these decks and what they do with the characters from that universe and how they translate them all over to the Magic universe.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts as well. It's not my jam, but I don't know if I care. As long as the card's interesting, I don't really care what the art is on it. I'm fine with that either way. So as long as the cards are fun and the decks are fun, that's all that matters to me. The IP is not that big of a deal for me. Okay, so the last things we have coming up here, end of the year 2022, is the actual main set is the Brothers War. So it's going to be a throwback essentially to an expanded version of Antiquities. So this is a set taking place in Magic's past, and we're going to see the Urza and Mishra War kind of expanded out. Antiquities was a pretty small set, and they didn't really know what they were doing, frankly, back then. This I'm super hyped for. As hyped as I am for Dominaria, I'm obviously a Magic boomer. I like this old stuff. I like the throwbacks too, especially. This one I am super excited to see. Because there's a lot of nostalgia for me for that old school stuff in Magic, and this is seeing new takes on old stuff I'm just really into. Does this do anything for you guys?
Are we going to find out how they died now? Is that how this is going to happen?
Yeah, so Urza dies when? I know he's around through the Weatherlight saga at some point. Mishra's a really gray area. He dies in the Brothers War, at some point during this conflict. But I know at some point when I think Gerard and Urza are in Phyrexia trying to get to Yawgmoth, they see Mishra, and he's half machine now. But it's never made clear if that's just an experiment, or if it's Urza hallucinating, or if it's really Mishra's body being, turned into a machine. That's kind of been left gray, and they've never readdressed it. So maybe that will come up here. Who knows?
Well, maybe that's with these two sets. They're going to fill in all those gray areas.
Yeah, could definitely
them
be.
Going to Phyrexia to fight Yawgmoth, and actually filling in all the blanks and making the set a whole thing now.
Yeah, and the other thing there is Jumpstart 2022. Jumpstart was a super cool product that no one got to play, both because of the pandemic and supply issues. So hopefully that gets fixed with this one as well. And yeah, more Jumpstart. Great. I'm fine with that. That's a super fun format, and being able to have two neat, not really draft formats. I guess Commander's Legends is a draft format, but Jumpstart isn't really a draft, but it's one you can sit down and play quickly and casually with somebody.
Yep.
That's a really fun idea, and I'm glad we're getting more of that.
And didn't they announce that there's more pack types in Jumpstart 2022 this time? They had announced Eldrazi and I can't remember the other one, but they hinted at some new pack types.
Yeah, they're not going to be just the same ones we had last time. It's a whole different thing. So I'm sure there'll be some overlap, but yeah, they named some. I don't even remember what the ones they named besides Eldrazi, but yes. And in 2023, that's when the Lord of the Rings set is going to come out. It doesn't say when, just 2023, and those are going to be draftable boosters. That's going to be a full expansion. So that's 2023. There's a few other small things too. There's another unset coming out, which doesn't really affect us because those cards aren't legal, but there's things like that coming next year too. So
just more unlands I have to sort in the store, and people are going to want to buy. It's so annoying.
So that's the slate for 2022, and I don't know what I'm into all of it. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I complain about getting burnt out, but I don't know. I want more stuff too. So that's it for the coming year. I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we get closer and more details come out. We still have 2 more sets coming out this year already. So
Sure are.
Yeah, we'll keep ourselves busy, no doubt. So let's jump into this main topic here. We're going to talk about free spells in Commander with a focus on like surprises. There's a lot of free spells like Ornithopter or Old Kobolds that cost 0 mana to cast, and there's free things like Mox Opals or Diamonds that are free functionally, and there's things like Rewind as a counterspell that you can cast for 4 mana and then it untaps, and that effect functionally makes a spell free. Ancestral Visions you can suspend for nothing and, draw 3 cards after 3 turns. That doesn't cost anything. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about things that you can do when no one thinks you can do them because you're tapped out, basically. So these tend to be instant speed effects, ways to respond to a situation when your opponents think you can't respond to a situation. And this was really interesting. I suggested this, and I started doing my research on it because I was like, okay, well, we're going to talk about the announcements. That's going to suck up a chunk of the show. So we don't, need to have a topic that's too huge because we only have a smaller window to fill than we usually do on a show. However, as I started digging down, there's a lot more of these free spells than I was thinking of. And I think a lot of them should get played more than they are. There was a bunch of these that I'm going through going, that's really good. I could definitely run that. Why is this not being used? Why is this not being used? I actually sent, you're not at work yet, Chris, but I actually sent a list to the shop of like 4 or 5 cards to see if they have them stock that I want to get.
I know. I have it connected to my phone. I know.
So yeah, like as I'm going through this, I'm like, some of these are really, really playable. So first things first here, just in a general sense, is this something you guys think about when you build decks? Are there specific decks or situations where you're like, this deck really wants to have some answers that I can cast when I'm tapped out? Max, is that something that you think about with certain decks?
I don't think about it in that sense. Like, I want to make sure I can cast a Force of Will, if I'm tapped out. I just play Force of Will because it's a good card. Like, I don't think about it situationally like that.
How about you, Chris?
Not really. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and got to tap my manas. I'm a Windshield Wipers player. We go up and down the whole time.
I would say it's not something I generally worry about or think too much about, other than until I built my Kedis and Crom deck. And because of the way that deck works, I swing with Crom and I play, this spell and that spell and that spell, and all of a sudden he's dealing 24 damage and Kedis is out, so it's hitting everybody for 24. That's something people want to respond to and keep from happening. However, since I've played so many things, if somebody like Path to Exile's Crom when he's flying in for 24, and I've just spent 3 spells getting him there, that's super backbreaking. So I found that's a deck where I want to have a few of these options. There is a Force of Will in that deck. There is a, Pact of Negation in that deck. There's multiple of these that I can cast for nothing because not only do I need to save my commander in those situations, I tend to be tapped out too. Like I need to have things I can cast for a minimal or in many cases no mana to save my commander from that happening because I just tend to be tapped out because I've spent everything getting to that point where I can alpha strike people.
Makes sense.
Now, however, looking at, going over the list of the popular ones here, and you've got things like, Fierce Guardianship is in just under 50,000 decks, which is crazy for a card that's not that old. Force of Will, no surprise, that's in just under 40,000. It's a legacy staple going back, 25, 30 years. It's crazy expensive, but it's super good too. Deflecting SWAT, 35,000 decks in EDH Rec. It's not truly a counterspell, it's just a redirect, but I'm running it in that Kedis and Crom deck because I want to be able to redirect that Path of Exile away from my commander onto something else. So that's why I run it there. But to use an example, Force of Negation's in 28,000 decks, which is a really good counterspell that's super prevalent in Modern right now.
Sure is.
I don't run that. Because I don't, in that deck, I don't care about doing things on other people's turns. I'm not trying to stop someone else from winning for the most part. I want to stop them from stopping me from winning. So Force of Negation doesn't do me any good in that deck. But if you keep going down the list, looking at a few of these, I was shocked. Mental Misstep is in almost 25,000 decks. And I can't think of, I'm definitely sure a lot of that is competitive, like CEDH level decks. Is that legal And I know it's legal in Vintage and Legacy. Is that Modern legal, Chris? I don't think it is. Is
No,
it?
No.
that's not Modern legal.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still a $5 card from basically EDH and Vintage and Legacy play. That's pretty crazy for an
It's
uncommon.
banned in Legacy too.
Is it banned in Legacy too? Well, there we go.
Yep.
So Vintage and EDH then.
Yep.
But I always think of that as like an eternal format card, and I guess competitive counter target spell with converted mana cost 1. But Phyrexian mana, so you pay 2 life, it costs you nothing. You can do that when you're tapped out. I was like, oh man, I maybe want that in Kedis and Kram. That will stop the Path to Exile, or it will stop a fog, or it will stop, someone's whatever 1 mana spell that I need to stop.
I don't know if it plays into your deck theme enough, though. I mean, yeah, it's a protection spell, but I'd rather, be able to cast another spell to do something different with it instead of relying on just countering one type of spell.
Well, I think the beauty of it is, particularly in competitive Magic, a lot of times people aren't just trying to use it for a save. They're using it for like a value hit. Like if you can spend 2 life to kill someone's Soul Ring when they go to drop it. In competitive, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
At the way I play, I'm not going to ever counter anyone's Soul Ring on turn 1 or turn 2. That's just not like the game style I'm looking to play.
Oh, I totally would. I mean, I counterspelled
I would do it to
Library
like
on turn 2. I didn't even hesitate.
I mean, no, I would do it to one of you guys for the lulz. Like it would be funny to do it to one of you guys, but like I wouldn't do it to somebody I didn't know, even if it was advantageous. It's just not what I want to be doing. But I mean, 25,000 decks is a big deal. That's a lot of decks for that card. So it kind of got me re-looking at that. Foil is a spell I'm running in my Edric deck for the same reason. I guess I said it was primarily in Kedis and Krum because I usually don't count Edric because it's not really a deck I play that much. But I'm running Foil in there. It's 2 mana blue normally to counter a spell, but you can just discard an island and another card, which can be any card, and just counter a spell. Foil's in 5,000 decks, but I feel like, man, particularly if you're playing mono blue, you're pretty often going to have an island in hand, and who cares what you pitch? If you're pitching a cantrip or something, that's a free counterspell to save you or to stop someone else's combo win.
Yep.
I'm a little surprised Foil doesn't show up anymore in decks.
I wonder if a lot of these people don't, realize they're out there. Because,
For
see Force of Negation, they see Force of Will, but they don't go into the deep dives looking for the older stuff that can do similar stuff but isn't quite as generically good.
And the other thing about Foil, too, is it has to be an island card. So if, like, looking at some of my decks that are particularly 2 colors, I'm like, oh, man, there's only, 5 basic islands and a shock land and a dual land in here. So, I'm not going to have an island very often in hand.
That's true.
Maybe if you're not as greedy as I am with your lands, that's easier. But, that's definitely... Now, my Edric deck has a ton of basics. I think there's, 15 islands in that deck. Just basic islands alone, let alone a couple of ones that have multiple land types. So it's much easier there. But some decks, I'm running 5 basics and, a couple duels with island type, and that's it. So I wonder if that's maybe part of it too. And then when you go down the list, there's a few more here that still see play and still aren't bad. Daze is a old-timey kind of a classic card that has seen a ton of play in other formats over the years.
Return an island or something like that.
Return an island you control to its owner's hand rather than pay its mana cost and counter target spell unless its controller pays 1.
Yep.
So it is like a mana tithe effect kind of, but you can hit them for free if you bounce an island back to your hand.
Yeah, it's good for counter wars because it's like, oh, I force your thing, and the other guy's, well, I'm gonna force your thing, and then you're like, oh, well, now I'm gonna daze you, and
right.
Yeah,
and then
I remember playing Legacy.
Particularly if you're playing in a competitive format, whether it's CEDH or an Ultra Eternal competitive format too, your decks tend to be so tight that there's probably plenty of situations where the land you're bouncing is probably already been tapped for mana anyway, and then it's just going to be your land drop next turn. You are probably not going to hit a land drop because a lot of times those decks are content with 1 or 2 or 3 lands down in the field. And if they're hoping to not draw one, and so they're going to draw something else or a card they put in the top or whatever from a tutor or something along those lines, and then they're just going to drop that island they bounce anyway. So it's just not even a penalty really. Commandeer lets you take control of a spell.
I haven't seen that in a long time. I've seen it before, but it's been quite a while.
Well, it was one of those cards that I've seen it in collections I've bought before and not really paid any attention to it. It's a $20 card now.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and it's in almost 2,000 decks in EDH Rec. It's 7 mana to hardcast it. You may remove 2 blue cards in your hand from the game rather than paying Commandeer's mana cost. and you gain control of target non-creature spell and choose new targets for it. So it's a kind of a misdirect kind of thing. You're just retargeting a spell. But again, pitch 2 cards and it's a free misdirect. That's not bad. I don't have any decks that I consistently know when I have 2 blue cards in my hand. Like, again, if you're playing some kind of a mono blue control list, that's a pretty decent card.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I mean, take anything. I can think of a lot of spells I'd want to take.
Absolutely, for sure.
Continuing down the list, there are a few more, such as Ricochet Trap. So let me pull that up, because I have no idea what this card does.
I just have Scryfall up, and I'm typing them in, because I looked them up, and I've now, of course, forgot half of them.
Yeah, we're going deep.
So Ricochet Trap is an instant for 3 and a red. If an opponent casts a blue spell this turn, you can pay red instead of the normal mana cost. So not essentially free, but way cheaper than 4 mana to change the target of a spell that has a single target. So those Swords to Plowshares for you there, Dana, and your pass.
This is one of the cards that I sent to the LGS here in town to see if they have any in stock that I'm gonna.
I guarantee we do
in that deck, because it's one of those cards I've like seen before, and yeah, like I said, that's not truly free, but it's pretty close, and yeah. 1 mana to do that effect is really good, and I'm genuinely surprised it's only in 1,700 decks in EDA Track. That's a real solid effect.
Yeah, following that up is another trap card, Mindbreak Trap. This is from Zendikar block, the original one? Yeah. 2 blue for an instant, but if an opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you can pay 0 instead of the cost, and you exile any number of target spells.
Now, once upon a time, this was a modern card. Does this still see play, Chris?
Not really. No, like the only trap I really ever see in Modern per se is Archive Trap, and I think the other one's called Needle Break Trap, or the black trap card. That those are pretty much the only 2 that I really ever see played.
I feel like this is probably the kind of thing you'd more likely run if you were in a small meta and someone played like a Storm kind of deck frequently, and you're like, oh, they're just gonna be casting 3 spells pretty often, and this is just my way to stop that Storm count.
And that's why I just play Trinisphere and laugh at them.
Sure, right, yeah. And the other important note, this exiles any number of target spells.
Yes.
So it gets around uncounterable as well.
Sure does. Doesn't say counter, doesn't say,
so that's pretty useful as well. Although this is not a cheap card anymore, this is closing in on $20 as well.
Yeah, some of these random cards, I'm surprised.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is competitive EDH. These cards that have never had a reprint and that are pretty good. This was a mythic from Zendikar block, so it's been 15 years since it came out and has never had a reprint.
Yep.
Yeah, some of those are rough. What else do we have? We have a couple more here from the counter spells that are kind of decent. Max, what do we have?
Yeah, so the next one is Thwart. 2 blue for an instant, but you can return 3 islands you control to their owner's hand instead of paying the mana cost for the card, and then you just counter target spell.
Balancing 3 islands is a big deal, but I don't know, to be able to not pay for a counterspell in an emergency.
It has to be a big emergency, in my opinion, to bounce
Yes.
3 lands to your hand. If you aren't, sure, if you are playing like a blue-green landfall deck, I'm sure you're going to put those all back on the battlefield next turn, but outside of that, that's a huge temple hit for yourself, so you better be able to win the game next turn if you save yourself with that card.
That is 100% the first thought I had was like, this is probably the kind of thing I'd be much more likely to run in some kind of a landfall deck that had blue access to blue, like, Damp Omnath or something.
Continuing the list, at just over 500 decks is Disrupting Shoal. This is X blue, and you may exile a blue card with converter mana cost X from your hand rather than paying the mana cost, and then you counterspell if its mana cost is X.
So it's Kozilek.
Yes. You have to pitch, if they're casting a 3-drop, you basically pitch this and a 3-drop and counter their spell.
Yep. This is actually a pretty versatile card, though, too, because double blue and X for its actual casting cost. I mean, I'm surprised I don't see more play of this one.
This was one of the ones that jumped out at me, too. And looking at it, I'm like, I don't know what deck I would want to run that, because, okay, my Talran deck consistently is going to have blue cards in hand, but they're also going to consistently be like 1 and 2s, so it's not going to do me any good to stop a board wipe, which is what the deck kind of hates the most. So I couldn't really find a deck for it, but I also was like, oh, but this is still it's something for me to think about, because I can absolutely see situations where this is a really useful spell. And I think we had one more here, Max, for the counter spells.
Last but not least, at just over 450 decks is Subtly. This is from Modern Horizons 2. This is the Evoke Elemental. It's typically 2 and 2 blue, but it has flash and flying, and then you can evoke by exiling a blue card from your hand to cast this creature, and when it enters the battlefield, choose up to one target creature spell or planeswalker spell, and its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library.
So you pitch a blue card from your hand and pitch this basically and nail a nail a target creature spell or planeswalker spell.
Yep.
How is this seeing play in terms of Modern, Chris?
This is the trashiest of the trash ones.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. This is like a consensus among all of us who play Modern at our local store that this one is probably the worst of the 5 of them that came out or 4 of them that came out.
Because you're usually not worried about creatures or planeswalkers for the most part?
It just doesn't do enough because it puts it on the top or bottom, and they're just going to be like, well, I'll put it on the top, and you just pitch 2 cards in a competitive format where you're trying to stay on tempo for their one that they're just going to draw next turn and jam into the field again.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. You're just better off with your Force of Negation kind of effects to stop. Okay, I see that. Yeah, and same thing in Commander, probably. It's for the most part, there's just better ways to stop effects. And again, in Commander, you tend to lose games less often to planeswalkers and creatures than you do to instant sorceries that you need to stop.
Yep.
So I'm guessing there too, like maybe if your deck cares about elementals or something where it has a little bit of extra gas, if you have to cast it as a creature, that's fine. But yeah, I've not seen this one cast at all anywhere. So
I mean, it is
but
nice.
It's not a terrible card.
A 3/3 for 4. I mean, so
yeah, with flying.
You could just cast it for its flash cost instead of evoking it, and evoking is a absolute last case scenario type of thing.
Yeah, if I was playing some kind of an elemental tribal deck, I'd for sure run it.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the only creature I can think in Commander that I would definitely evoke this for right off the bat would be like a Craterhoof coming into the battlefield or something. Because right then and there, you're like, oh no, we're all going to die. No, that can go away for the turn, and we can try to kill you before that happens.
Yep. Okay, so the next kind of rough... My holy cow, that cat is loud. So now a 4-person podcast with 3 of us and my cat going crazy in the background. And I'm pretty sure she's not even on the same floor. She's definitely downstairs. And I think she might be coming up the stairs now, but oh my lord.
Yep, she's definitely coming up the stairs.
So the next one is kind of a rough category I called freed value generators. So like these aren't necessarily going to stop things from happening, but they are pretty useful on situations. The first and most obvious one here is Taxian Probe. So you can spend a single blue on it, or you can spend 2 life. And I think this is banned in a gazillion formats as well, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah. I don't know if it's banned in Legacy, but I know in Modern it got banned like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. Because you just ran it in almost any deck, wasn't it, basically? Like you spend 2 life to get information and it replaced itself.
Yeah, for the most part. It was really good in mainly your combo decks is what it was. Because, it's a free spell. Plus you're getting the information so you know if you can combo off or not. And you get to draw cards, so...
In Commander, I think it mostly shows up in Storm decks. I was looking at it, I'm like, I remember running this in my Talrand deck that always felt really good to just pay 2 life and make a Drake. And then, replace itself too. That was always useful in that deck. And I was like, I've not seen it in a while. And I went and checked my Talrand deck and I'm like, oh, at some point I took it out of the deck.
Really?
I'm like, I don't know why I did that. So I'm going to put that back in. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what my logic was, but at some point in the last couple of years, it came out of the deck, so I'm going to put it back in.
And no notation on what took it out either.
I only started taking notes, I don't know, probably a year and a half ago, and it must have been sometime before then, because I don't have a note about why I took it out, which is why I started taking those notes. So I'm going to put it back in the deck.
There you go.
The next one here, I actually think is, I don't know if I would call it underplayed, particularly because I think it's like a $12 to $14 card now. Noxious Revival is the kind of blue equivalent of Gitaxian Probe. Yeah, so it's a Phyrexian mana, so you can spend a single green or 2 life. Put target card from a graveyard on top of its owner's library. Instant speed, too. So, worst case, you just basically exchange your draw for whatever is in your graveyard. It's not fully that. Technically, somebody can... When you put it on top, they can screw with your top deck, but most of the time you're going to get back what you want. But what's super cool about this card, in some of the splashiest uses I've ever seen for it, are in more competitive metas or environments where someone's doing something to win that requires a card on the top of their own library, and someone Noxious Revivals like it's a fetch land or something to the top. It's like they're like, okay, I'm going to Vamp Tutor before the turn of my turn, and I'm going to go, and they're like, oh, I know what they're going to go get, and they're going to win. So as they go to draw, Noxious Revival, fetch land on top. So now you can't get it. It functionally buys you a turn to deal with whatever combo they're going to get.
Yep.
in a competitive environment, that's huge. Like, that's a big deal to screw that up for somebody. And for no mana, you can just do it regardless of what you just did on your turn. That's pretty powerful when you can also use it to bring your best thing back. Like I said, though, it's a $14-ish card now, so I get why it doesn't maybe see that much play, but I think that's really strong and probably doesn't get talked about enough.
I think it's also $14 because I know it's hard to find is the thing, because people don't realize it is just an uncommon, and it's legal in pretty much every format right now, and people just, it's jammed in random bulk boxes, and people don't know where any of the stuff is.
For sure.
I don't think we have a single one in the store.
And it's not one of those cards that has never had a reprint since the original New Phyrexia printing.
Yep.
Another old format all-star that I think recently got banned from Pauper is...
It is, I do believe it's banned in Legacy too. Yep, banned in Legacy too.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And restricted in Vintage, I think.
Correct.
Yep. Crazy. Because this is one of those cards that doesn't seem that strong until you really think about it. And that's Gush. 4 in a blue, draw 2 cards, but you may return 2 islands you control to their owner's hand rather than pay Gush's mana cost.
Now, I guarantee the reason this card is banned is because it's instant speed. If this was sorcery speed, it'd be a different story.
Yes. And it's also a thing where, like, again, in a competitive format where you're not worried about making every single land drop, you're going to return 2 islands that you already tapped for something else, and you weren't going to make a land drop anyway on your turn probably, or you're hoping you wouldn't draw one, and then that makes your land drop.
Yep.
So, like, it really only, for the most part, is probably setting you back 1 land in a lot of situations. And again, there's a good chance you're going to play that on your next turn or something. It's like it's almost winds up being draw 2 cards for little or no cost.
Exactly.
Outside of super competitive environments, it doesn't see much play, and I guess that makes sense because I don't have any decks. Do either of you two run this card?
No.
Yeah.
Negative.
I don't
That's
play
not the
blue,
way we
so.
tend to play. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Chris doesn't play that way, and like I just don't play things that are like that. I'm very rarely in a situation where I need that kind of like perfect synergy, like where drawing 2 cards is the situation. Is the difference between like losing a game and winning a game. That's just not the power level I play at. But like I remember the first time I saw this card and saw that it was banned in Legacy or whatever it was, being like, what? I could not figure it out. It wasn't until like I understood the game a little bit better and realized how crazy strong it is.
Yep.
I think Chris mentioned Archive Trap.
Archive Trap. Oh, if a person searches their library, you may pay 0 that rather than paying the 6 mana on Archive Trap. Mill that person 13 cards. Eat it. Modern All-Star. Hate the card.
Every fetch land someone cracks. Like
yep.
That the search is just there all the time, constantly, and
yeah, it's the worst feeling in the world when you play a fetch land past the turn, or they go first even, and they play an island and then play like a Hedron Crab, and you're like, man, all my fetches on this first turn, and you're just like, crack my fetch, and you just stare at them like, you got it? You got it?
Because there goes a quarter of my library right there.
Worst case too is when they mill the cards that you have to fetch, because like in Modern you only have like 2 or 3 fetchable lands in some decks. So
sure.
If they mill those lands, you're just like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah, in Commander, it doesn't see a crazy amount of play. It's in about 1,000 decks, but like if I was playing a mill deck, I'd run this for sure in a blue mill deck.
Sure would. I do run it in my mill deck.
Yeah. Now, the reason people probably don't is even with a reprinting in the list, it's a $35-ish card.
And that's just recently, I think it went up that expensive.
I think so, yeah. There's a couple other ones though here. Once I got down past the obvious ones is where things got kind of interesting, and I started finding cards that jumped out at me as being things I thought should see a little more play. Downhill Charge is one from way back in Nemesis.
Such a good card.
You might sacrifice a mountain. So this isn't one of those things where you gotta bounce 2 islands or whatever. Just a mountain, any mountain, rather than pay its mana cost. Target creature gets plus X plus L to end a turn where X is the number of mountains you control.
So
maybe
good.
in a multicolor deck, that probably isn't that amazing. But in a mono red deck, you just sacrifice a mountain and you're going to do an extra like 8 or 10 damage in a lot of situations.
Yes, I play this in the 1v1 format of Commander, where I'm running mono red. So you sack this, and you give something +5, +0, and you're just like, eat it. Yes, it's so good.
Yeah, and if your commander is, regularly has double strike for some reason, it's just that much better. Like any buff you can give something that has double strike just hits that much harder. It's not a gazillion decks I would run it in, but I felt like, man, I was like, it's only in 900 and some decks. I feel like that I'm surprised this doesn't show up more often for something, and particularly because it's instant speed and you can do it when tapped out. You get those situations where someone's like, oh, I'll just take the 6 damage or something from your creature. I won't block. Then you can drop this on the field for nothing.
Yep.
You thought you were fine. You're going to take another, 9 more that you weren't ready for, and I win, or at least kill you. The next one here is Gut Shot, which is, I guess, a little more well-known. The Phyrexian mana do damage to any target. This is almost exclusively a Storm card, I think, right?
Yeah. They play it in the Mono-Red Prowess deck in Modern as well, just for the Prowess triggers. Plus it's 1 damage.
Oh, sure, because it costs nothing.
Yeah.
Just change 2 life and you get a Prowess trigger.
Yep.
Sure, that makes sense.
I've seen them do Gut Shot into their Swift Spear. Like, they target their Swift Spear because they can't target the person, or one of their creatures gets their Swift Spear big enough to kill the other creature or something like that in, like, defensive situations or stuff.
Okay, sure, that makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, the opportunity cost is super low. You just spend 2 life. And, 1 red isn't terrible either, necessarily.
It's not bad.
Yeah. I think the next one here is also a card that gets played in Modern a little bit, right, Chris? Mutagenic Growth?
Yeah, that gets played a lot. I hate this card, but I love this
Is that
card.
an Infect thing?
Yeah, Infect, the Prowess deck, like I was saying, because it's Phyrexian mana, so you don't care about the green.
Right.
I'm trying to think if it's played anywhere else. I can't really think of anywhere else that it would be played. But yeah, just +2/+2 for 1 green mana or 2 life.
Probably isn't necessarily quite good enough for Commander. At least for me, I was like, I don't know if it Giant Growth doesn't get played really. I don't think this doesn't get played in Commander necessarily either. But I can also, I don't know, free buff is fairly useful.
I don't think it's good enough, honestly. I can't think.
Probably not.
Really trying to run through my mind of what I would play it in, and I cannot come up with anything. Because I'd rather just pay the 1 green mana for like a Giant Growth over a Mutagenic or something else.
Yeah.
Now here's one again that I was like, oh, this card's really good, and I'm surprised it's only in 311 decks. That's Blazing Shoal.
Yeah, X and double red for instant that you can remove a red card with convert mana cost X in your hand from the game rather than paying Blazing Shoal's mana cost. And then you get to give target creature +X/+0 until end of turn, which obviously X is what that converted mana cost was of the card that you exiled. Or you can pay the X. So, I mean, overall, I think the card's good. I don't know exactly, like, so you want to exile something with, like, converted mana cost 7 or something to give it +7/+0, and obviously that card's 7 mana for a reason, so it's probably a really powerful card, so I don't know if you really wanted to exile something like that.
Here's where I thought of it. So Atarka World Render is a dragon.
Oh, that's gross, really?
Right.
That's gross.
And it gives all your dragons double strike, and as a result of that, it's a dragon tribal deck for the most part. And most dragons are like 5 or 6 mana or something. So like if you swing on somebody with a Tarka, Blazing Shoal kills somebody probably. Because you're going to pitch a dragon that's like 5 or 6, which is doubling on the hit because of double strike. And Tarka's already a 6/4. So like almost any dragon you pitch is going to be lethal damage on somebody because of the double strike on a Tarka.
Agree with Chris. Gross. Don't like that. No.
So yeah, again,
I swear, Dana, if I die
like,
to a Blazing Shoal on someone's Atarka World Render or whatever it is, I'm seriously just going to set my cards down and walk over to you and just be like, Dana, you're fired. You can't talk about cards anymore.
Yeah, that was when I was just like, it should be in more than 300 decks. That's a really solid card in some situations.
I still think it's really niche, though. Like, it has to go in a certain deck.
Yeah, I was thinking also like Jaleva tends to, Nephalia's Scourge tends to run like really high CMC cards because she's trying to cast things for free off the top.
Or a Gisela deck or something that's doubling damage.
Exactly, yep. Gisela's a good one. And there tends to be a bunch of angels in Gisela decks too. Pitch that 6-drop angel and the damage is being doubled off Blazing Shoal. Yeah, that's a good one too. That's a really good example. And in the last one here, as far as removal,
this one?
This card is so cool.
Dark Triumph. It's from way back in Nemesis, and there's a few cycles of free stuff in Nemesis, 4 and a black, but it says, if you control a swamp, you may sacrifice a creature instead of paying Dark Triumph's mana cost, and it's a black card, so you probably control a swamp. Creatures you control get +2/+0 till end of turn, which isn't devastating, but it's creatures. And I was just thinking of any black token deck that's trying to win through combat damage, or even a black elf deck or something, where you're going really wide. So, hey, I'm swinging with 7 elves at somebody, and I'll sacrifice one of them, but be able to give all my creatures +2/+0 for free. And again, after blocks are declared. Okay, I'm going to block this one with my commander because it'll survive, and I'll just let the other 5 through, and I'll take, my 11 damage and be fine, and then kill you next turn. Well, Dark Triumph. Drop it.
That's really
your
not
commander
bad
dies.
at all, yeah.
Again, it's narrow, but like, oh man, it's only in 50 decks. Like, there's way more black token decks or black elf decks, I think, that could use this. And probably people just don't know it exists.
Yeah, wow, yeah, I would definitely play something like this. I mean, I'm thinking of, you got your, the green-black Sapperling deck that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of quite a few decks that this would be wonderful. And I mean, even just if you're playing like blue-black zombies or something, this could be a deck.
We had a friend, he doesn't play the shop much anymore, who used to have a Gave Guru of Spores deck that wasn't a combo deck. It was just a heavily aggro token deck.
That just rebuilds no matter how many times you destroy it.
Right,
It's
yes.
so dumb.
But like, this would have been fantastic in that deck. He doesn't care if you don't care if he loses one of his stupid tokens.
No.
And all of a sudden all of them get +2/+0. Like, I would have been terrified of this card in that deck.
Yeah, plus all the other anthems and stuff. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, We're going to take a picture of this card, and I'm probably going to buy one.
Yeah, this was one of the ones I was like, Again, I don't have a deck for it, but this should be in more than 50 decks. This is a cool card. So then we have some removal spells here, and I won't go into huge detail on a lot of them. Like Deadly Rowlock is the black version of Fierce Guardianship, where if you control your commander, it's a free removal spell.
Yep.
Force of Vigor is the green one from the first Modern Horizons set. It lets you destroy an artifact or enchantment for free on someone else's turn.
Two of them.
Two of them, technically, yeah.
Yep.
A good card. Those are both relatively expensive, but they're really solid. Force of Despair lets you blow up creatures on someone else's turn. It's the, Force of Vigor equivalent from that cycle in black. But there's a couple here I thought were really solid too. Snuff Out is an old card from back in Mercadian Masks. 3 and a black. And this is another one of those, if you control Swamp Things, and you're in black, so you probably always do. You can pay 4 life instead of paying the mana cost and destroy target non-black creature and can be regenerated. So, okay, you can't destroy black creatures, but pay 4 life to destroy a creature, particularly in a deck that, like, there's a lot of decks that have life gain baked in. Oloro obviously does, but, like, Max's Ragnar Krav deck gains a lot of life, too. And, maybe Ragnar Krav don't care because you have access to Path and Swords, but, like, still, there's just a lot of black decks you're like, I'll pay 4 life to instant cast a removal spell for no mana. I think that's really solid.
Well, you're also playing with 40 life, so I mean, it's not,
Exactly.
You need to use your life total as, a resource of some sort, and it can't just be letting people punch you in the face, so you got to use it other ways too.
4 life is a much bigger deal in other formats than it is in Commander.
Yes.
So besides that, there's also Solitude, which is in about 1,000 decks. I believe this is the black Evoke
White.
Elemental?
Yes.
White Elemental.
We don't talk about
the white
Grief.
one.
Grief's another bad one.
This is the one where you can evoke it by exiling a white card from your hand, and when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature, and the creature's controller gains life equal to its power. So, Swords to Plowshares on a body.
Yep. And it's a 3/2 with lifelink. So, I mean, overall, the card seems good. I haven't yet seen it played in Commander. I've seen it played a lot in Modern, and it's very powerful there.
I think that in Commander, the biggest problem is you have swords and you have Path available to you, and there's only so much targeted removal you tend to want to run that hits only creatures.
I like the versatility of it, because still at 5 mana, you could just jam it into the field, exile something,
Sure, yeah.
and you get a 3/2 with lifelink.
No, there's plenty of upside to it for sure. Again, I don't have decks that run it, but like I'm not going to ever be surprised when someone plays it.
The nice part is that it's up to 1 creature, so you don't even have to do the clause if you don't want to.
Yep, they did.
Sure,
I think
yeah.
they did that with all of them, just due to the simple fact that if it's the only creature that you're casting, and that's the only thing on board, you don't want to target that card itself.
Right, yeah. After Solitude is Pyrokinesis. This is a 6 mana, 4 red instant, but you can exile a red card from your hand rather than paying the mana cost, and it deals 4 damage divided among any number of target creatures as you choose.
And this I've seen play in other formats, doesn't it, Chris? A little bit?
I don't know if I've seen it. It seems good. Because it's just a creatures.
Maybe I always think that because I cracked like 4 of these in Eternal Masters packs, and I was always mad, and I'm like, this better have a purpose somewhere. I'm gonna be annoyed.
Yeah, the big one that I could relate it to would be Fire Blast, because you can sacrifice 2 mountains for Fire Blast to deal 4 damage to a creature or player. And that one would see way more play in that, because that's played in Legacy Burn.
Okay, yeah, this is just exile red cards from your hand and 4 damage.
Yep.
And it's only creatures, which makes it way less versatile. But yeah, it's still seeing almost 1,000 decks. That's not nothing.
After that, in just under 900 decks is Snapback. That's 1 in a blue, but you can exile a blue card from your hand rather than paying the mana cost, and you can return target creature to its owner's hand.
This was another one I was surprised. Number one, I don't think I'd ever seen before. I just found it when I was doing my searches here. But I was like, oh, that's actually not bad either. I'm surprised that doesn't see a little more competitive level play just to stop a combo at instant speed.
Yeah, I can see it for stopping combos, but I noticed I tried playing Bounce in Commander once, and I didn't like the feeling of them recasting it. I'd rather either counter or just straight up remove the card.
Especially in a situation where you're, in this case, you're losing the snapback and you're exiling a blue card to do it.
Yeah.
That's why you gotta run Reflector Mage, Chris. They can't cast it right away.
There we go.
Reflector Mage is such a good card.
It is. And rounding out the removal spells is Abolish. Similar to Snapback, you have to discard a Plains card to do the free portion of this, and then you can destroy target artifact or enchantment.
And I have actually played this card before, and I didn't think it was bad, but I came to the point of seeing what other more powerful cards there were, because you got, Return to Dust, and the other one that exiles two of them just seems strictly better.
Contraband.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's disenchant, a little more expensive disenchant with an upside that you can maybe on occasion discard a Plains and do it for free. This is another one I was debating trying out. I have just found out that I tend to have Plains cards in my Zero deck. And I'm like, I wonder if I would find it useful to be able to pitch a Plains to cast this for free sometimes. Because that deck is kind of mana hungry. Planeswalkers are expensive. I tend to find myself tapped out a lot. And I was wondering if this might be one that I would find useful to have as an answer in that deck. And okay, once in a while I got to overpay for it if I don't want to discard a Plains, so I pay 3 mana instead of 2. And maybe that isn't the end of the world either. So I think I'm going to give this one a try.
Yeah, in mono white that's pretty good because I mean you're playing land tax, so obviously you can go get those Plains. Exactly. So might as well just do it.
Exactly. So this is another one I'm going to give a go, and I'll report back maybe down the road, let you know how it works. Because This is one I'm interested in trying out. And the last kind of rough category we had for free spells is just general surprises. So like the biggest one here is, again, in that free cycle, if you control your commander, you cast a spell for free, that's Flawless Maneuver. And that just it's an instant speed. Creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn, and you can cast it for free if you control a commander. I mean, even at 2 and a white, that's a pretty good cost though for that effect, let alone if you can cast it for free. So I quite like Flawless Maneuver. I've got burned by it a few times. But there's a couple other interesting ones here as well. Invigorate is
plus
a
4,
green card.
+4 or something like that. I know that gets played in Legacy.
Target creature is +4/+4 to end of turn. And if you control a forest, again, which you probably do, you can have an opponent gain 3 life to give a creature +4/+4. The place I immediately jumped out at this one was in something like Calamax, where you're copying spells, and it does have access to green too. So like, you give a person 3 life, and you're giving something +8/+8.
Yeah.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, that seemed pretty... I mean, it's not amazing or backbreaking or anything, but I'm like, that seems like a decent value piece in that kind of deck. If you're playing Calamax that cares about some kind of combat damage tricks, that seemed useful there. You have Fury of the Horde, which is an extra combat step card from, I think was an Ice Age originally?
Cold Snap.
Cold Snap, okay, there we go. And you can exile 2 red cards from your hand rather than pay the mana cost, and it gives you an extra combat step. The problem, I found it really tough. I ran it for a while in an extra combat step kind of focused Adriana Captain the Guard deck I had. 2 red cards is a much bigger ask than 1 red card in a multicolor deck. That was my problem. Multiple times I was in a position where like, oh, I can win this turn if I can cast Fury of the Horde for free. Because if you can't cast it for free, 7 mana is a lot.
It is. And
having 2 red cards in hand to cast it for free was really, really tricky, I thought.
Yeah. I'm definitely... After I read this card, I think I'm going to pick one up because I'm going to try this in one of my 1v1 decks and see if I can make it work or not.
Yeah, I think mono red is probably where it would really shine because it just would be so much easier to have the 2 red cards in hand for it.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot of mono red decks though where like the ability to do that is going to be a really big deal, I think.
Yeah, because you look at, the value of the cards in your hand, like, are these worth it, or is it worth it just to punch in another, 20 damage or whatever I just dished out this turn?
Exactly. We had things like Force of Virtue, which was the Modern Horizons one of that 4 cycle from white.
That's an anthem, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's an anthem.
Too?
+1/+1 enchantment, yeah.
Yep.
I'm saying in the worst case, you're spending 4 mana for an anthem. That's not great, but it's not awful either, and it always has flash, let alone if you can pitch that white card and do it for free to catch somebody off guard.
Yeah, because it's 5 mana for Dictate a Heliod, which gives +2/+2. So, I mean, it's a horse apiece depending on how you want to do it.
Yeah, not amazing, but I think it's an interesting enough card. We have Endurance. That is a green incarnation that was in the second Modern Horizon set with Flash and Reach.
And it's a 3/4, which is dumb.
For that mana cost, it definitely... you were talking, Chris, about like the utility on these to cast them as creatures.
This one is probably the best. Well, In terms of commander purposes, I think this is the best one.
A 3/4 with flash and reach is for 3 mana is really, really solid all by itself. Particularly like an Omnath deck where if it dies, you flash it in, block something, it dies, it deals 5 damage because it's a creature or an elemental, in an Angry Omnath deck.
Yep.
Or you have the option to do it for free if you exile green cards from your hand. Just a lot of utility in this card.
Yep. It also allows you to target a player and they shuffle their graveyard together and then put it on the bottom of their deck, so it's all randomized.
Yep.
And I was thinking, in a mono green where green doesn't quite have enough, so you have the land base, or you could run artifacts for graveyard removal type of things. This could just be a nice little gotcha of, someone's doing graveyard stuff. You're just like, I'll endurance your graveyard back, so you can't do any of that. Okay, good. Yep. Yeah. Cool. Let's keep playing.
In Commander, this feels like maybe the best one of the bunch.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the Fury's really, really good too. 4 damage, so good.
Yeah.
3/3 double strike, so good.
Yeah. In the last kind of weird general surprise one I wanted to throw out there is another one that I'm like, I should pick this up too. From Prophecy is Snag.
I play this one. I have this in a deck right now.
Nice. So with 3 and a green, and you may discard a forest from your hand rather than paying its mana cost. And it's a fog. Prevent all combat damage dealt by unblocked creatures this turn.
Yep. I play this in my Spiders deck.
That's a really solid card too, and it's only in 130 decks, and I'm really surprised by that.
Yeah, it's super powerful. I think fogs in general are extremely powerful cards, and a free one is even better, because you see Constant Miss a lot because you get to recur it. So having a free one as well, I think, is just as good. Well,
particularly in our meta where people tend to play combat damage stuff,
yes,
or at least creatures attacking, even if maybe it's not going to be Alpha Strike stuff. Even Max's Brago deck, that you have to attack, right?
Yep.
There's just a lot of decks where even if they're not trying to swarm you down or get huge beats, creatures just tend to be, creature attacks tend to be part of how people play where we play. And fog effects are, I think, even stronger there, and we don't see a lot of them. And the ability to do it, okay, I'm going to make a big move and I'm going to tap out and pass a turn, and I was not ready for this thing that has haste that's going to kill me now. Well, at least I can cast Snag for nothing.
Yeah, that's true. It is amusing because you could do weird wacky shenanigans with it because it says unblocked. So if someone's blocking stuff, and it's all these creatures got trampled, but I'm going to let this 7/7 through or something like that. It's I can fog, so you don't die, but you're going to take all that trample damage anyways.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of neat stuff with this card. So I like it quite a bit. I actually wound up sending, this is one of the ones sent to the shop as well. This one and the green fog from the Force cycle as well, which is what, Force of Virtue?
I do believe so.
Yeah.
No,
Force of Virtue is the white one. Yeah, I just sent the Obscuring Haze is the one from the Commander cycle as well, that if you control a commander, you can cast without playing 0, and it's the fog, 2 and a green normally. That prevents all damage dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control too, so even if you have creatures that block, your creatures still deal damage back.
Yep.
And Obscuring Haze is only $1 too, and I'm like, I should pick up a couple of those. So I went and got a couple, or I sent in a request to the shop for a couple of Obscuring Hazes as well. So yeah, just looking at this stuff, I just really was reevaluating some of these cards. Number one, I didn't know exist, but number two, I'm like, why am I not running this somewhere?
Yeah, it's all.
So this was very useful.
It's a good thing to discuss and people to think about, because of versatility, and that's something I always bring up.
Yes,
I like playing, modular is another word that I use too, but something that you can do multiple things with one type of card.
Exactly. And again, not every deck cares about that, but I've just found that as I've built more decks over the years that tend to play differently, I found, some decks want this and some don't. And knowing some of these cards that maybe I didn't ever bother to look up in the first place because my deck didn't play in a way that needed to do things when I was tapped out. I never bothered to research them, so I didn't know they exist. And now that I have decks that care about it, paid more attention to cards I've kind of not paid attention to before. So
I was kind of, when I was doing prep for this, I was interested in, there's a weird cycle from Mercadian Masks and Stronghold where it's if you control a basic land type and an opponent controls a different land type, you cast the spell for free. So Mog Salvage, I think, is probably the best known one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really weird templating and conditions, but I didn't know those really existed.
Yeah, there's definitely way more of these than I thought there were just in general.
And I think the favorite one of mine that I found doing prep for this was Partition Scorn. It's from Future Sight. If you played another white spell this turn, you can play Partition Scorn without paying its mana cost, and it destroys all enchantments.
Yep.
That's a cool card.
It is.
Oh, that is really cool. I missed that in my search. Yeah. So, like, if you're playing in a mono white deck without many enchantments, there's really no downside to it.
Right.
Because you're gonna probably have played a white spell already. Yeah, that's really solid. I would bet there's a lot of mono white, like whether it's Balin or Kemba, Car Agent, like equipment heavy decks that don't have many enchantments in them at all. And you're mono white, so you're almost always playing, white spells that turn. Destruct this for free and kill enchantments, it won't hurt you. This is a really good spell too. I missed this one in my search, but that's real solid. Good catch, Max.
Thank you.
Okay, this is one more I might want to pick up now.
And the best free spell out there is still Omniscience. I don't care what anybody says.
The free spell that makes all your spells free spells.
Yep.
Good call. Okay, I think that is going to wrap up episode 284. We ran a little bit long, but that's okay if that happens once in a while. I will be back next week with another show. I am Dana. You can find me on the Twitterbirds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDR_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him at Urs Bearwalker. And our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin McLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Until next week, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.